The stories you are about to hear are not fiction. At least that's what their authors claim. Each one was written in the dead of night by someone who swears it really happened. Whether you believe them or not is up to you. But once you start listening, you may find it harder to convince yourself they're only stories. Now, on to story 1. The Other Tenant. I've lived in the same apartment for 4 years now. It's nothing special. A 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an old brick building downtown. The kind of place with radiators that hiss in the winter and windows that never quite close right. The rent's cheap and the neighbors mostly keep to themselves. That's what I liked about it. Quiet. Predictable. But lately, it hasn't felt like I'm the only one living here. It started with little things. My toothbrush wasn't where I left it. A glass in the sink I didn't remember using. At first, I figured I was just distracted, working too much, forgetting small details. Then I came home one night to find my front door unlocked. I swore I'd locked it. I'm obsessive about it, double check every time. But the deadbolt was wide open, and the chain latch hanging loose. Inside, everything looked normal. No signs of a break-in. My laptop was on the desk, TV untouched, nothing stolen. I told myself maybe I'd slipped. Maybe I was tired. But deep down, I knew better. Because the glass on the counter wasn't mine. It was a short, heavy tumbler. The kind you drink whiskey out of. I don't own any glasses like that. The next day, I asked my landlord about it. He laughed it off. Said the building was old, doors sometimes didn't catch right. But when I described the glass, he went pale. "There's no way you found that here," he said. "You must have brought it in yourself." I didn't argue, but I couldn't shake the look on his face. Over the next week, it got worse. Books moved from my shelves. Shoes I hadn't worn in months left by the door. I woke one morning to find my couch cushions turned over, like someone had been searching underneath. I started locking my bedroom door at night. Even then, I'd hear faint sounds, a floorboard creaking in the hall, the soft clink of glassware. Once, I could swear I heard the murmur of a television, but when I checked, mine was dark. The breaking point came last Thursday. I got off work late. It was raining, streets shining under the lamps. By the time I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I was soaked and exhausted. The door was unlocked again. Heart pounding, I pushed inside. Everything was quiet, too quiet. I flicked on the lights and froze. There was a chair in the living room, not one of mine. An old wooden rocker, dark varnish, fabric seat, worn smooth. Positioned neatly in the corner, angled toward the window. I stood there for what felt like forever, rain dripping onto the carpet. Then, from the kitchen, I heard it, the scrape of a chair on tile. I bolted, down the stairs, into the street, across the block, until my lungs burned. Called a friend, crashed on his couch for the night. The next morning, I returned with him in tow. The chair was gone. But on the coffee table sat the glass, the same heavy tumbler, half full of something dark. My friend swore he didn't touch it. I haven't slept properly since. 2 nights ago, I woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of my front door opening. I held my breath, heart racing. Footsteps padded down the hall. Slow, steady, deliberate. They stopped outside my bedroom. For an hour, whoever it was just stood there. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Finally, the floor creaked as they walked away. In the morning, my door was still locked, but there were wet footprints in the carpet, leading from the hall to the window. I called the landlord again, begged him to change the locks, check the cameras, anything. He hesitated, then said something I can't stop thinking about. "You're not the first." When I pressed him, he shut down, said it was just stories, and hung up. Last night, I set up my phone to record, propped it on a shelf, facing the living room. When I checked the footage this morning, my stomach turned. At 2:14 a.m., the camera flickered, and then, in the middle of the frame, the chair appeared. 1 second the corner was empty, the next it was there. A man sat in it, tall, thin, face obscured by shadow. He rocked slowly, hands resting on the arms. After a minute, he stood, walked toward the camera, and vanished. I don't know what to do. I haven't gone home since. I'm writing this from a motel on the edge of town, but I can't stay here forever. My things are still in that apartment. But I can feel him watching. Wherever I go, I swear, I see the reflection of that rocker in windows, in glass. I hear the creak of wood, the clink of ice in a tumbler. I don't think he ever left. I think I'm the other tenant now. The man with no knees. I grew up in a small Midwestern town where nothing much ever happened. The kind of place where the loudest thing at night was the whistle of the grain train or a dog barking down the street. Folks there are plain, hardworking, and just suspicious enough to keep their heads down when they see something they don't understand. When I was a kid, maybe 10 or 11, I heard my first story about the man with no knees. It was on the playground, whispered the way kids whisper about Bloody Mary or the boogeyman. Supposedly, if you walked home alone at night and heard a dragging sound behind you, you weren't supposed to turn around. If you did, you'd see him. Too tall, moving strange, legs stiff as boards because he didn't have knees. And if he caught you looking, he'd follow you home. At that age, I didn't believe in much. Ghost stories were just ways to make boring towns interesting. Still, I remember the way older kids swore up and down that he was real. They said one of the middle schoolers had seen him outside the bowling alley, standing under a street lamp at 2 a.m, just rocking side to side like he was trying to bend legs that couldn't bend. I forgot about it for years. Until last winter. It had been snowing for 3 days straight. The town was buried. I was living back home after college, broke and picking up shifts at the gas station. Closing shift ended at 11:30. My car was ice solid, so I walked. Just 15 minutes down Main, cut through a residential street, and then home. That night, the snow muffled everything. The world felt dead and heavy. I remember pulling my coat tighter, crunching along, and realizing I hadn't seen a single car for 10 minutes. Just me, the snow, and the sound of my boots. Then I heard it, not boots, not the crunch of normal footsteps, a drag. Long, heavy, deliberate, like someone pulling wooden boards across the street behind me. At first, I told myself it was plows in the distance, or maybe a deer shifting through the drifts, but it was steady. Slow. Always the same distance behind me, no matter how fast or slow I went. That's when the old story came back. The man with no knees. I didn't want to turn around. I kept my eyes forward, breath cloud in the air. The drag continued, measured, scraping just under the howl of the wind. My body screamed to look, but my mind told me no. Then it stopped. Silence. I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the snow was playing tricks. And then, right beside me, close enough I should have seen someone out of the corner of my eye, I heard it again. Drag! Drag! I broke, turned my head before I could stop myself, and I swear to God, he was there. Tall. Wrong. His legs were too long, too straight, like telephone poles jammed into boots. No bend at all. He swayed on them, tilting side to side, head lolling like it was too heavy for his neck. His face, if you could call it that, was pale, smooth, featureless, almost like snow packed too tightly into a mask. When I met whatever counted as his eyes, he stopped swaying, stood still. Then he began to follow. I didn't run at first. Something in me knew better. I just kept walking, faster, cutting down the residential street toward home. Every time my boot hit snow, his drag behind, steady, patient. When I reached my street, I finally broke into a sprint. Heart pounding, lungs burning, I tore across the snow, up my front steps, key fumbling in the lock. I didn't look back until I was inside. Through the curtain, I saw him at the end of my driveway, still, watching. He stayed there all night. The next morning, he was gone. I told myself it was stress, a hallucination, but the snow in the driveway had been disturbed. 2 deep grooves cut all the way from the street to where he stood. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Every sound outside made me flinch, but nothing came. Life returned to its dull rhythm. Until a week later, I was on register at the gas station when a guy came in, face pale, shaking so hard he dropped his wallet. Said he'd walked home after drinking at the bowling alley and something followed him. He kept mumbling about straight legs and no bend. I wanted to tell him he wasn't crazy, that I'd seen it too. But I didn't, because I realized something then. He'd turned around, just like me. And just like me, he was being followed. It's been months now, and I don't think he ever left. I see him sometimes, across the street when I'm taking out the trash, or reflected in the glass when I close up shop, always standing still, always far enough away that no one else notices. But here's the thing that scares me the most. It's not just me and that drunk guy. More people have started whispering. A teenager said she saw him outside her window at night. An old woman refused to leave her house after dark, claiming something straight and tall walked her backyard. Every time someone turns to look, he chooses them, adds them to his list. And now, when I hear the drag outside at night, it's not just one set of legs, it's several. Like he's teaching the others, or building something, or maybe, just maybe, he's getting closer to figuring out how to bend. And I don't know what happens when he does.
The signal and the static. I've been driving long haul for 12 years. Cross country, coast to coast, every mile of highway you can imagine. I've seen weird shit on the road. UFO lights, ghost deer, tornadoes spinning out of a clear sky, but nothing that's ever stuck with me like this. This wasn't just a sighting, it was a broadcast, and I think it was meant for me. One, the night run. It was late August, heading eastbound on I-80 through Nebraska. Midnight run, truck cab lit only by the glow of the dash, AM radio low just to keep me company. I was halfway through a stretch of flat nothing when the CB crackled. Now, most guys don't bother with CB chatter anymore. Smartphones killed the mystique. But I keep mine on, habit maybe, or just for the comfort of voices when I'm 600 miles from home. That night, it came alive with static. Then, faintly, Breaker 19, you there? Nothing unusual except for the voice. Male, low, but off. Like the words were being dragged across sandpaper. I picked up the mic. Copy that. This is eastbound on 80. What's your 20? Silence. Then the same voice, a little louder. Keep driving. Don't stop. 2. The wrong channel. I thought some joker was screwing around. Switched channels. Flipped to 21, 22, back to 19. The static followed. Every channel. Same voice threaded through the white noise. Don't stop. Not yet. It's not safe. My stomach nodded. I killed the CB, but the speaker kept hissing. The damned thing was off, should have been dead, but the voice whispered again like it was crawling out of the static. Mile marker 197. That's where it ends. 3. The truck stop. I told myself it was fatigue. I hadn't slept in 14 hours, caffeine buzzing in my veins, so I pulled into the next truck stop, neon sign half dead, only 3 rigs in the lot. The moment I parked, the CB went silent. Dead as a brick. Inside, the diner lights buzzed. Grease smell, burnt coffee. The kind of place that never really shuts down. A waitress shuffled over with a pot. Didn't say a word. Just poured, stared at me too long, then shuffled away. On the TV above the counter, static hissed. No channel, no picture, just snow. And buried under it, barely audible, don't stop, not here. 4. The man in the booth. There was only one other customer, a guy in a booth by the window, back to me. Denim jacket, gray hair poking out from under a cap. He turned his head just enough for me to see his profile. It was the same voice. I don't mean it reminded me of the voice. I mean when he spoke, without even looking at me, I knew. Truck 1, 07. You left your lights on. I froze. That was my rig. Number stencil right on the side. When I blinked, the booth was empty. 5. Back on the road, I should have stayed. Called dispatch, called anyone. But fear does weird things. I just wanted distance between me and that stop. So I hit the road again. The highway stretched endless. No cars, no lights, just me, the hum of tires on asphalt. Then the CB hissed back to life. Almost there. 197. I glanced at the dash. The odometer clicked over 19.6. 6. The girl. At marker 19.7 she appeared. A girl in the middle of the road, white dress, long hair plastered across her face, barefoot. I slammed the brakes, horn blaring. The truck shuddered, wheels screaming. She didn't move, just stood there, arms limp at her sides. I stopped 10 feet from her, heart hammering. When she lifted her head, her face was blurred, like heat rising off asphalt, smearing her features. And then she spoke, not with her mouth. Through the CB, you shouldn't have stopped. 7. The blackout. Everything cut at once. Headlights, dash, engine, dead silence. I sat in total dark, only the sound of my ragged breathing. Then faint glow. The girl's eyes, 2 pale lights burning through the dark. She stepped closer, 1 slow pace at a time. The CB hissed, not her voice now, the man's again. Drive. Now. The truck roared to life on its own, lights blinding, engine growling. I stomped the pedal. Tires screamed as I shot forward. In the rear view, she didn't move, just shrank into the dark. 8. The end of the road. I didn't stop again until sunrise. Pulled into a rest area, shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. Checked the CB. Dead. Not even static. Checked the odometer. It read 197, locked there. No matter how far I drove after. I left the rig at the yard that morning. Told dispatch I was sick. Haven't driven since. 9. The aftermath. It's been a week. I don't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear static. Last night, I turned on the TV at home. Snow filled the screen, and under it, the voice again. 197. Almost there. I don't know what happens at the end of the marker. I don't want to find out. But I think they'll make sure I do.
The library, after hours. When you live in a town as small as mine, you take whatever work you can get. For me, that meant the public library. I wasn't a librarian, not really. Just a part-time assistant. Minimum wage, 2 nights a week, shelving books after the regular staff went home. The pay sucked, but it was quiet work, and I could slip in earbuds when no one was watching. The library was old, built in the 1930s with high ceilings, brass lamps, wood that smelled like dust and polish. It had that peculiar hush, like a church, too heavy, too absolute. Even when you were alone, you felt like something was listening. Most nights were uneventful. I'd roll my cart down the aisles, slip books into place, and glance at the clock until midnight. But there was one rule the head librarian drilled into me on my first day. A rule she made me repeat back, word for word. Never stay later than 12:30. Ever. If something keeps you, if the lights go out, if you think you hear someone leave, do not linger. I laughed at it then. Thought it was superstition, but I don't laugh anymore, because last Friday I found out what happens if you break the rule. The night started normally enough. Cold outside, the kind of late winter chill that stings your nose the second you step out. Inside, the library's radiators rattled, pumping out dry heat. I pushed my cart through the fiction section, half watching the time on my phone. At 11:40, I noticed something strange. The shelves in the back corner, the ones nobody ever touched, were wrong. If you spend enough hours shelving, you develop a sixth sense for the order of things. You can glance at a spine and know exactly where it belongs. But these books, they weren't where they should be. Dickens was next to Dean Koontz. A battered Bible sat between 2 Stephen King paperbacks. At 11:40, I noticed something strange. The shelves in the back corner, the ones nobody ever touched, were wrong. At first, I figured some kid had been goofing around. But when I tried to put them back, more were out of place. Whole rows misfiled, letters leaping shelves, authors scrambled like someone had picked up the catalog and shaken it. I sighed, parked the cart, and got to work. That's when the lights flickered. Just a little stutter, like the building had swallowed a breath. But when they steadied, I noticed something worse. The shelves weren't just out of order. They were different. One aisle was longer than I remembered. Much longer. It stretched into the shadows, where the overhead bulbs didn't quite reach. I squinted, counted rows. By my memory, the library had 6 aisles in that section. But now, staring into the dimness, I saw a 7th, a new aisle. I should have left. Should have clocked out early, claimed food poisoning, anything. But curiosity hooked me. I stepped closer, scanning the spines. The books were strange. Leather-bound, cracked, titles pressed in faded gold. Not like anything in our catalog. No barcodes. No stamps. I pulled one out. The cover was soft with age, pages brittle. No author, no copyright. Just a single line on the first page, hand-inked. We are the things you misplace. I shut it fast, heart pounding. Footsteps echoed behind me. I whipped around. No one was there. But the books had shifted again. Shelves bending, titles moving like they were alive. And then, a sound I'll never forget. Shh. A whisper. Not from any person, from the shelves themselves. Shh. Panic clawed through me. I shoved the book back and started toward the front desk. But the aisle stretched longer with every step. The exit light that should have been visible at the end never appeared. Shh. The whisper grew louder. Not angry, not kind, just insistent, like a librarian hushing a noisy child. I broke into a run. Somewhere, a clock chimed. Midnight! The sound echoed through the shelves, heavy and final, and the books began to fall. Not randomly, in sequence, one after another, top to bottom, left to right, like dominoes, each thud closer, chasing me down the aisle. I sprinted, lungs burning, dodging hardcovers, slamming to the floor. The aisle seemed endless. Then, ahead, a doorway yawned open. Not the front desk, not anything I recognized. Just a gap where the shelves bent away, revealing blackness beyond. I didn't think. I dove through. It wasn't the library anymore. I landed hard on cracked tile, the air thick with mildew. The ceiling above was higher than it should have been, beams vanishing into shadow. The shelves here were taller, stacked haphazard, leaning like they'd collapse at any second. And the books. God, the books. Thousands of them, scattered, torn, piled like debris after a flood. I picked one up. My hands shook so bad, I could barely open it. Inside were photographs. Not printed, not digital. Actual, developed photographs. The first was of the children's section of the library, but it wasn't empty. Dozens of kids sat cross-legged on the carpet, their faces blurred like someone had smeared them with paint. The next photo was of me, from behind. Shelving books that same night, I dropped it and ran. The aisles here twisted, spiraling, looping back into each other. No windows, no doors, just shelf after shelf, ceiling groaning under the weight. My breath echoed too loud. Then I heard it again. Shh. Not a whisper this time. Louder. A chorus. Thousands of voices layered over each other, rising from the shelves. I clamped my hands over my ears and stumbled blindly, praying for an exit. That's when I saw movement. Something between the rows. Tall, thin, arms too long, fingers brushing the spines as it walked. Its head tilted, listening. It stopped when I stopped. Tilted the other way when I did. And then it shushed me. One long, rattling hiss. Shh. I bolted. Didn't look back. Just ran until my lungs gave out. When I collapsed against a shelf, sobbing, I realized I was holding another book. I don't remember picking it up. It was thinner than the others. The title, hand-inked, Those Who Stay After Hours. Inside was a single photograph. Me. Again. But this time, I wasn't shelving. I was crouched in the shadows, wild-eyed, clutching a book. the exact way I was right then. I screamed, threw the book, and when it hit the floor, the world snapped. I was back in the library, the real one. The lights hummed, the aisles were 6 again, and the exit sign glowed ahead. My cart was where I'd left it. My phone said 12:28, 2 minutes before the cutoff. I didn't even clock out. I left everything, bolted into the night, and didn't stop until I was safe in my bed. I tried to convince myself it was a dream. Stress, fatigue, hallucination. But when I went in for my next shift, the head librarian pulled me aside. "You saw them, didn't you?" I must have looked guilty, because she nodded, grim. "They come when the shelves are hungry. That's why we don't stay past 12:30. I asked her what happens if you do, if you can't find your way out. She didn't answer, just handed me an envelope. Inside was a photograph. Me again. Walking into the library that night. Taken from the inside. The Black Tunnel. I've worked construction for 20 years, and I've never quit a job halfway through, until last summer. Our crew was hired for a highway expansion just outside a small rural town. Nothing major, just widening the lanes, adding a few exits. Same thing I've done 100 times before. But on the third week, the machines hit something they shouldn't have. A tunnel. At first, we thought it was an old drainage line. Happens sometimes. Small towns patch things together with outdated infrastructure. But this wasn't concrete or corrugated pipe. This was stone. Cut and stacked, black as coal, forming a perfect arch. We cleared more dirt and realized it wasn't just a short passage. It stretched. Long. Too long. The foreman called the state, asked if there were any records. They came up empty. No maps. No history of construction. Nothing. As far as the county was concerned, there wasn't supposed to be anything underground. But the tunnel was there. Waiting. Curiosity got the better of us. A few of the guys, myself included, grabbed flashlights and climbed down to take a look. The air hit me first. Cold, damp, carrying a sour tang that reminded me of rust and mold. The kind of smell you find in basements that haven't been opened in decades. Our lights cut through the dark, being swallowed fast by the black stone. The tunnel was just tall enough for us to stand, wide enough for 3 men shoulder to shoulder, and it kept going. We walked maybe 200 yards before the first guy chickened out. Said the air felt wrong, heavy, like it was pressing on his chest. We ribbed him, but I felt it too. The deeper we went, the more the sound of our boots seemed to fade, like the walls were swallowing the noise. At 300 yards, we found carvings, symbols etched into the stone, circles, jagged lines, shapes that hurt to look at. Some of them were smeared, like they'd been melted. That's when we heard it. Not an echo, not dripping water. Breathing. Slow, ragged, ahead of us in the dark. We spun our lights forward. Nothing. Just more tunnel. But the breathing didn't stop. It matched ours. Inhale when we inhaled. Exhale when we exhaled. Like something was imitating us. We got the hell out of there. The foreman sealed the entrance with plywood, called in the state again. They sent an inspector, but 2 days later he bailed. No explanation, just packed up and left town. Meanwhile, things on site started getting weird. Tools went missing. Machines wouldn't start, even with fresh fuel. One morning, we found the bulldozer tracks in the dirt, but they didn't match the bulldozer tires. Too narrow, too long, like something with straight dragging legs had walked through. Guys started quitting. Said they were hearing whispers at night, seeing shapes at the edge of the floodlights. I stayed. I needed the paycheck. But then came the night I couldn't ignore it anymore. We were running late, working under the halogens. Around midnight, I went to take a leak by the tree line. That's when I saw someone standing near the tunnel. Not one of the crew. Too tall, too still. I called out. No answer. My flashlight caught his outline. A man, I thought, but not quite right. Arms too long, head tilted back like he was sniffing the air. I blinked, and he was gone. The next morning, the plywood was ripped off. The tunnel gaped open. The foreman ordered us to patch it with concrete. Said he didn't care if it took all day. But when the trucks came, the concrete wouldn't set. It stayed wet gray sludge, dripping down the walls no matter how thick we poured. By the next day, it was like we'd never filled it at all. The state cut funding. Project canceled. They told us to leave it, bury what we could, and move on. But you can't bury something that doesn't want to be buried. I left the job after that, tried to forget it. But last week, I drove through that stretch of highway. The tunnel entrance is still there, just off the shoulder. Black stone arch yawning into the earth. No signs, no barricades, just open. And as I passed, I swear I saw someone standing in it. Tall. Still. Watching the cars go by. I didn't slow down, didn't look twice. But now, at night, I hear it again. That breathing, matching mine. Like something followed me out. You've just made it through 10 tales from the dark corners of the internet. But remember, every voice claimed it was real. Every warning came from someone who lived to tell it, for now. If you can't shake the feeling that something followed you after listening, maybe that's because these stories don't always stay on the page. Sleep well if you can. Remember to like and subscribe.